Hey everyone, Jimmy Smith back again. This time, once again, a little MMA history. You guys seem to like that a lot on this channel. The worst beatdowns in MMA history from my perspective. This could be a two-parter. As I was sitting making my notes for this one, it's usually just fights that occur to me off the top of my head, and then I do a little research and I make notes. There are a lot of them that I remember vividly enough to talk about and break down with from my perspective. So there are a lot. So there might be a part 2 to this one because I don't see myself getting to all of them in one video. Let me know in the comment section if you want to see a part 2. And if the viewership's high enough, I'll give it a shot. But worst MMA beatdowns of all time. I want to make something very clear. It isn't the worst knockouts. It isn't the most one-sided fights. Why? A bad knockout or a late stoppage or any of those things sucks. The faceplant knockout. These are fights where the beating was so long and so sustained, I worried about the guy's health. It wasn't, oh my God, a face down knockout. That sucks, and you can give you brain damage, it can kill you. But it's the long, sustained beating that really does the damage in combat sports. A flash knockout, no matter how bad it is, it can suck. But I worry much more about a beating that goes on and on and on and on, and there isn't a knockout. That's what this is about. Also, one-sided fights. Khabib versus Edson Barboza. It was a one-sided fight, but I never worried necessarily in the fight about Barboza's health. There were plenty of fights that were wipeouts that, somebody got controlled a lot or they weren't on the same level or something like that. I never looked at it and went, okay, this guy's, they need to stop this. This guy's in serious trouble. All of the ones I'm going to cover now, I thought at the time as I was watching it, this person's health is really in jeopardy. There might be a problem here. So, and one of these issues, two things you're going to notice. A lot of these took place in Japan. Japan has this, Japanese fans like that. There's a guy named Daijiro Matsui, if you go back to the Pride days and remember him. He fought everybody and was this tiny dude, and he got killed every single time, and the Japanese fans just ate it up. And there's something about the doomed warrior taking on more than he can that is culturally keyed into the Japanese idea of combat sports. And so some of these, just a lot of these are in Japan where Japanese fans ate up that sense of self-sacrifice. And also they were early. You didn't have the unified rules in the United States where the commission's going to step in and make sure something happens. It didn't happen in Japan. They don't have that. So, to start us off, worst beatdowns in MMA history. An old one. Igor Vovchanchyn versus Enson Inoue. This was August 27th, 2000 in Pride. People don't know the background. Igor Vovchanchyn, I've talked about him before on this channel. In the old school days, he was like Fedor before Fedor. And then he had this like Russian style where he threw these big, gigantic hooks, had incredible power. A really short heavyweight. He's only like 5'9" or something, 5'8". But packs a punch that was just unbelievable. Laid out guys in 2000, around then, late 90s, early 2000s. He was an absolute monster. And one of the most feared punchers in the heavyweight division. End of story. The guy was absolutely incredible. And his opponent in this one, Enson Inoue, was a fighter. Him and his brother Egan were kind of MMA pioneers. He's Japanese-Hawaiian. And a well-rounded fighter, went to war with Frank Shamrock. He beat Randy Couture by armbar at Japan Valley Tudo back in the day. Armbarred Royce Alger in the UFC. He was in the old tournament days. He was supposed to actually face off with Guy Metzger. Got injured in that fight, although he won by armbar. And then Tito Ortiz steps in. That was the start of Tito Ortiz's career. A little MMA trivia for everybody. But Enson was one of those guys who was skilled, was well-rounded, just fought so aggressively, even when it wasn't to his benefit. And also, he wasn't a big light heavyweight, and he was fighting heavyweights. Fought Mark Kerr. He just fought guys who were just way too big and just didn't care and went for it. And very much, he fit very much the framework of Japanese MMA at that time. And he would go out on his shield every single time. This is one of those cases. I remember he sprinted out to the middle of the ring and just traded bombs with Igor Vovchanchyn. Like, just swinging for the fences, both of them. They missed a lot. It wasn't there. It was when he went to the ground. He gets knocked down. The ground and pound that Igor Vovchanchyn put on him was monstrous. I'm remembering it now, and it was, holy God, because Igor had these short arms. He was a stocky guy. Guys like that generate incredible power with their ground and pound because they don't have long arms. So it's just wham, wham, wham. And I remember Enson's head just bouncing off the canvas and eating these big punches over and over again. He had gi pants on at the time, and he was going for triangles and going for stuff, and Igor would shrug it off and just blast him right through the canvas. And this went on for 10 minutes. For people who don't remember, Pride had a 10-minute round and then a 5-minute round after that. They had one 10-minute round. At the end of the 10-minute round, I thought Enson was going to die. I remember he was swollen, and they got him to his corner, and he was staggering, and he got there, and he was slumped in his corner, and I said, he's going to die. I remember thinking that. He's not going to live. And the corner stops the fight, and Enson lost his mind. Just wanted to keep going and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there going, dude, you're this close to going out. And they took him to the hospital. He told the story later. He was like, yeah, they took me to the hospital, and I realized how bad I was. And they asked him what it was like to get hit by Igor Vovchanchyn. And he said it was like being in a car accident. And your head goes through the windshield. And goes, it doesn't hurt. You don't feel anything. You just go, and the jarring effect of Igor hitting you was like your head going through a windshield in a car accident. So, like, are you hurt? Are you okay? Like, yeah, you think you're fine, but you're not. And that's what it felt like over and over and over again. That was one of the worst beatings I ever saw. Ugh, terrible one. Igor Vovchanchyn, instant NOA. That was in 2000 in Pride. Another Pride one with a staple here, much like Igor Vovchanchyn. Somebody fought Igor Vovchanchyn. Kazushi Sakuraba, Ricardo Arona. Pride Critical Countdown, 2005. Once again, obviously a Pride fight. Ricardo Arona I ran into him in Abu Dhabi, last month? And the dude is still jacked and huge. Yes, he was doped up. All the Pride fighters were juiced out of their heads because they didn't test for PEDs. They encouraged you to use PEDs. So Arona was just massive and had amazing jiu-jitsu. He's from my team. He's a Carlson Gracie guy. And Sakuraba had nothing for him. Had nothing. Where he couldn't take Arona down. His jiu-jitsu wasn't better than Arona's, and he was smaller. And Arona, unlike every other Carlson guy, and he had beaten other Carlson guys, he had beaten Vitor Belfort, he had beaten Alan Goas, he had beaten these other guys from the Carlson Gracie team. Arona didn't try and grapple with him. Didn't try to submit him. Didn't take it as a point of pride, like, I'm going to submit Sakuraba. He just beat the dog piss out of him for 2 rounds and ground and pound, mauled him, put his head right through the canvas. And every time Sakuraba tried to do anything offensively, Arona had better jiu-jitsu. His positioning was better. His defense was better. And he just easily countered Sakuraba's game. And I remember him trying to shoot in and take Arona down and just eating these short punches right to the face. Beat the career out of Kazushi Sakuraba. And that was a bad one. And I remember, once again, combined with the other losses he had to Vanderlei Silva, for example, I was like, man, Sakuraba's got to stop doing this. He's got to get out now. The Arona fight was the one that tipped it over the top to me because, he had lost to Little Nog, he had lost to Vanderlei, lost to Krokop, and I just went, dude, you got to stop. This was the one. If this doesn't convince you to walk away, nothing's going to convince you to walk away because he got murdered in this fight. And he didn't walk away, ended up continuing to fight, but it was a shadow of his former self. Ricardo Arona destroyed Kazushi Sakuraba, one of the worst beatdowns I saw ever. Now, one that this generation knows about. Max Holloway, Calvin Kattar. This was one that I saw in real time. And it was UFC on ABC, 5-round beatdown. It went all 5 rounds, and I thought and still think not stopping this fight at the end of round 4 was criminal for his team. One of the issues, and everybody knows I call boxing for Pro Box TV now. Been a boxing fan for years and years and years. Boxing coaches are just more likely to stop fights than MMA coaches. MMA coaches don't like stopping fights because there's more social pressure. There's this idea that there's always a way to win, no matter how bad it really looks, because you can always submit somebody or do something crazy. This was one of those where when he came out from round 5, I was like, this is bad. For people that don't remember, Max Holloway beat the piss out of Calvin Kattar for 5 rounds. Period. Humiliated Calvin Kattar. It wasn't just a beatdown. It was embarrassing. And Calvin Kattar couldn't find him, couldn't hit him, and every time he tried to hit him, he got the crap beat out of him. It was a kickboxing match that was one way the entire time. Now, there was a little controversy. My broadcast partner, Dan Hardy, we worked together in Bellator. I interviewed him on my SiriusXM show, and he said, Dana White should have done something about this fight. And you can't. The promoter can't influence the fight. That's fight fixing. You'll lose your promoter's license. It's illegal to do that. So he was critical of Dana White walking up to the commission going, he needs to get checked out. We got to make sure he gets to the hospital. And Dan's point was, well, he should have done more. Well, he can't do more. It's not legal for a promoter to step in and tell the corner, hey, you need to stop this fight. That's fight fixing, right? You can't have a vested interest in who wins. You cannot influence the outcome of the fight. And telling the corner to stop the fight is fight fixing. Can't do that. So it was so bad for 5 rounds that I couldn't believe Calvin Kattar has come back as well as he has since then. I was like, this is going to be it for Calvin Kattar. Did beat Renato Moicano after that. He hasn't been the same guy since, but he's, I thought we'd never see him again after the beating he took from Max Holloway. So that was a horrible one. Only a couple years ago. It was in 2021. But that was one that during the fight, I wonder if they don't stop this, he's going to end up in a pine box. This is bad. They really need to stop this one. And they didn't. It went 25 minutes, and it should not have, in my humble opinion. Here's another one for this generation. Kind of. God, see, I screw that up sometimes because I go like, oh, you would know this one. And it was a few years ago. Maybe you don't. It's quite possible. Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard. I'm talking about the second one. You could easily make this claim for either fighter in either fight. I'm making it for Gray Maynard in the second one. You could argue Frankie Edgar, same problem, where he took such a beating in a draw and a win that you worried about his health. And I did at the time. For people who didn't see either fight, they were exactly the same in terms of Gray Maynard comes out, almost kills Frankie Edgar in round number 1. Knocks him down. He doesn't know where he is. Beats the crap out of him. There were 2 or 3 points where I thought they were going to stop this fight. They didn't, probably because it was a title fight. It was a main event. They kind of felt pressure to keep it going, which I understand. Referees, don't want to. You want to give a guy every opportunity in a championship fight to win. But Frankie Edgar gets beat up in round number 1, starts coming back after round number 1. First one's a draw, and the second one was a knockout, and he finishes Gray Maynard in the rematch in round number 4, the end of round number 4, with a butt whooping in that round that ends up getting a stoppage in the fight. Gray Maynard was never the same guy after that one. I remember seeing the end of that fight going, he's not going to be the same guy, and he wasn't. It wasn't. That was the end of Gray Maynard as a force in the UFC. You could argue it was the end of Frankie Edgar, and that Frankie Edgar had his moments after that. He lost to Benson Henderson in the fight after that, but he had his ups and downs after that, right? He did have some good wins, did beat Yair Rodriguez, for example, but the beatings he took in both of those fights were insane. Now, he then turned around and delivered a beating to Gray Maynard that was insane. So it could apply to either fighter. I remember interviewing Frankie Edgar a while ago on my SiriusXM show and talking about this fight. He doesn't remember anything up until the 3rd or 4th round. He doesn't remember. He goes, yeah, I remember that was in round 3 and they're going, okay, you got to do this, and that, and going, what round is it? He didn't know. And he goes, I don't remember. We talk about the first couple rounds and the comeback, and he goes, I don't remember any of that stuff in either fight. So obviously it shows the lasting effects of a fight like this, and that he doesn't remember the fight at all in the early rounds. It's all a blank to him. So we're going to end this one. Like I said, if you want a part 2, let me know, because there are some I did not put on here. This was one of the worst I ever saw in real time, and it was, in my opinion, a career ender for a legend. So it checks off a lot of boxes. Cro Cop versus Vanderlei Silva. This one was in September 10th, 2006. Saitama Arena in Japan. It was a Pride tournament. It was a Pride Openweight Grand Prix, the semifinal. Long story short, Vanderlei Silva, standout light heavyweight, the champion over in Pride, done some great things, beat Kazushi Sakuraba, beat a lot of legends, beat Dan Henderson, beat a bunch of guys. Went up to heavyweight to take part in this tournament, this openweight tournament. Beat Kazuyuki Fujita in the opening round. Then he takes on Mirko Cro Cop, who had every advantage in this fight. He was bigger, he was stronger, he was a better kickboxer, he was more precise. He beat Vanderlei so badly. And a lot of it on the ground. Because he knocks Vanderlei down early. And ground and pounds him to death. And what I remember so clearly about this fight is the style of Vanderlei was such that he tended to go forward and throw straight punches and kind of like be so aggressive you couldn't do anything about it. Cro Cop was too elite for that style. He was a southpaw, first off, so he was able to shoot those left hands right down the pipe against somebody coming right at him, and then he would angle off and throw a kick after him. So the style that kind of overwhelmed a mixed martial artist who is a good kickboxer but not great doesn't work against a world-class kickboxer, which is what Cro Cop was. I mean, this guy competed in K1 Grand Prix. He was one of the best to do it. So the style that overwhelmed other guys just made him a sitting duck for Cro Cop, right? So it's like, closing your eyes and flinging the ball, and yeah, someone's going to intercept that. In the NFL, you're going to get an interception. Similar kind of feel, Vanderlei just being so aggressive. It was the exact wrong strategy and the exact wrong style to take on Cro Cop. And not just that, Cro Cop hit so hard and was so technical and so sharp that Vanderlei's face just basically started melting. Destroyed him. And then they're on the ground, beats him up there too. Ground and pound to death. They stand up and he hits the Cro Cop head kick. It bounced right off his dome and he crumpled like a sniper got him. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. The beating plus the knockout. So he was already getting housed in every position. And then to cap it all off, he took a head kick knockout that would have dropped the rhinoceros. And I don't believe Vanderlei Silva was ever the same guy after this beating. He was never the same guy. Obviously went over to the UFC, had, I would say, mixed results. He doesn't have a winning record in the UFC. He's the only guy, by the way, that I can think of in the UFC Hall of Fame who never had a winning record in the UFC. Never. Started out 0-1 and never got over 500 his whole career. Little trivia for you there. He never got over 500. So the idea that he comes to UFC and still fought, he still had some entertaining fights. But the old Vanderlei that just ripped people's heads off in Japan, he never got off the canvas after that fight. So those are my list, worst MMA beatdowns of all time. There are some that did not make the cut that I might put in a part 2. If you guys want it, let me know in the comments section what your favorite ones are, and maybe I'll do another one. Appreciate you.